Congratulations, Thincol Thorson! You have successfully driven the Alphatians out of Thiatis City, rallied the military, defeated the most powerful empire in Mystara. So what are you going to do first, after naming yourself emperor? Then marrying the daughter of the previous emperor to cement your claim. Then starting a purge of known conspirators. That's right, the fourth thing you'll do is establish your own personal bodyguard. One loyal to you and not connected to the senators and patricians that help weaken Thiatis for their own gain. Then later update the bodyguard to make them more efficient and specialized. That's right, we're talking about the Skildervjord, the first and last line of defense between the Emperor and those that mean him harm. Welcome to Mystara. I'm Mr. Welch, and let's meet the men and women willing to take an arrow to the knee for the Emperor of Thiatis. How canon is this article? Only as much as you cram into your head. This is a fill-in-the-hole style video where I'm trying to flesh out a part of Mystara that is yet to be talked about, but definitely exists in some measure. I'm stealing from history because this is Mystara, and the numerus batavorum deserves some love in a fantasy setting. That's Julius Caesar's Germanic bodyguard, for those wondering. Use as much as you like, steal it if you need it, and ignore what you don't like. Caveat out of the way, let's dive in. Hours after the Spike invasion failed due to the leadership of the future Emperor Thincol, he found himself with a problem. The legions were now following him, and the surviving senators made sure to support him publicly. The previous emperor wasn't even cold yet before Thincol had taken the throne. But he knew the risks of leading Thiatis. Its reputation of duplicity was well earned. More than one emperor had been assassinated less than a month into their reign. Thincol planned on a good long period on the throne, and had no plans to die immediately after his victory. He had a formal bodyguard provided by Thiatian law, but he needed an incorruptible group that he could trust. The first batch of bodyguards was handpicked from the gladiators that had rallied to Thincol during the invasion. This initial group was known for being utterly loyal to the Emperor, but not very good at looking for potential assassins. They were trained to fight in a pit, not sniffing out ambushes or testing for poisons. They were beloved by the people as they wore stylized uniforms reflecting their past, but only with more armor to protect them. They consisted of all manner of races, with men and women recruited alike. The problems began to appear when the bodyguards refused to follow orders or use their positions to bully people they didn't like. While the crowds loved them, there were better solutions for Thincol's security needs. After a close call with an assassin in the middle of the night, Thincol released his bodyguards from his service. He made a point of honoring them with a giant festival, making them feel like heroes of the Empire rather than a bunch of freshly canned throwaways. Many of the original guards took jobs with the various power players, which also softened the impact of getting sacked. Thincol was still loyal to them. They were his troops. He wasn't going to abandon them. But he also wanted people that could actually do the job he hired them for. The Emperor needed a new bodyguard. Technically, this role fell to the first cohort of the First Legion, but they were all Thiatian. Thiatians, if you remember, have a terrible reputation for backstabbing. Thincol had purged a large number of officers from the military, as well as their powerful patrons. The army had grown soft and incompetent due to corruption. He was cutting out the rot and replaced the purged with competent officers loyal to him. But this made him more enemies than solved problems initially. Several officers relieved of command came from the First Legion, making Thincol's trust in the unit skeptical at best. Thincol needed warriors, ones loyal to him and him alone. He decided to retain the more competent gladiators and recruit his new bodyguards from his original home of Oceansend. During the Spike invasion, Oceansend declared itself a free city because the Alphatians were destroying all Thiatian outposts in Norwald. Despite their so-called neutrality, many of their warriors jumped at the chance to serve as the bodyguard of the gladiator now turned emperor. After evaluation and training, 90 warriors and 10 former gladiators were selected as the first Skjoldervjord. The impact was immediate. Many of the first cohort, the original bodyguard, were outraged by being officially replaced. Thincol had banished them from his palace, having placed them as guards around important buildings in the capital. This did little to appease them, though increasing their already substantial pay did help a little. Thincol finally devised a solution that removed the first cohort from the city, but allowed them to keep their prestige. He made the highest-ranking general in the First Legion his representative outside the Empire, and reassigned the first cohort to guard him. They couldn't refuse the order, and assassinating the general would harm their reputation. If the general returned to Thiatis City, the first cohort would revert to guarding Thincol. Fortunately, the general was a hand-picked replacement and spent the next few years reinforcing Thiatian holdings, giving the emperor time to establish his new bodyguards. Thincol's decisions paid off in dividends soon after the Skildervjord were established. While the emperor was parading in front of a village on a tour of his nation, Alphatian agents tried to ambush him from a crowd. Thincol was pulled back behind the ranks of his guards, who dispatched the enemies with some effort. This left Thincol unharmed, but concerned that the assassins had gotten too close without warning. After replacing multiple food tasters and having more than one arrow stopped by a bodyguard's shield, he realized he would need to expand the effectiveness of his guards. What was a single century of Skildervjord was broadened into a cohort of 500. The Skildervjord were now divided into 5 different centuries, each with a different role. The training was customized for each task, but all were trained in combat. To expand the recruiting pool of talent, warriors from Ostland and the Heldonic freeholds were permitted to join. The recruits were hired in private, as the identity of the Skildervjord is a well-guarded secret to avoid attempted corruption or replacements with enemy infiltrators. It is known that the recruits come from the northern lands, but which warriors guard the Emperor and which are merely mercenaries working for Thiatis is never revealed. The life of a Skjoldervjord is filled with danger, but it's also a comfortable one. A member is paid triple of that of a legionnaire, with more experienced members earning even more. The ones that physically guard Thincol are given Thiatian names to use publicly, but keep their original names private. The other Skildervjord's identities are state secrets, working undercover to protect Thincol and his immediate family. Even the Imperial family doesn't know which servant is merely a chambermaid, and which is a trained killer there to protect them. This keeps the Emperor's enemies guessing, making plotting an assassination difficult. The Skildervjord have access to the best clerical healing available, and are provided with magic weapons, armors, and other items they keep if they finish their service with distinction. They are regularly rotated on or off to keep them fresh, and to make it more difficult for enemies to discover their true identities. Thincol keeps their books off the budget and pays them directly through his own coffers. The Skjoldervjord are fully aware of where their gold and shiny magic items come from, making betraying their employer even less likely. Their high morale, training, and logistical support makes them one of the deadliest groups in Thiatis. The true number of Skildervjord is only known to the Emperor and the group's leaders, but is broken down into 5 centuries, each with 100 agents on average. Each century has little to do with the others. Most members only know of the existence of the other centuries except for the Skildervjord primus, which serves as the group's public face. The higher-ranking members are informed of the full scope of their organization and will coordinate with each other to maximize the protection provided. The Skildervjord primus are what people think of when Thincol's personal guard is mentioned. Known to the group's officers as the Face, they are all large men. Their uniforms make them stand out in any crowd, being a stylized version of what the Thiatians picture as northern warriors. They are famous for their bearskin helmets and capes, their muscle cuirass, and an obscuring face mask in the shape of Thincol's visage. This makes them intimidating, as well as anonymous. Despite their often gaudy appearance, each is a skilled warrior willing to lay down his life for the Emperor. Thincol is only seen in public with at least 10 of these warriors surrounding him, unless the location prohibits men under arms by Thiatian law, such as the Imperial Senate. Harold Forkbeard, a former gladiator from the first incarnations of bodyguards, leads Primus. He is a mountain of a man, standing a head taller than the rest of his men. It was his idea to recruit guards that didn't speak Thiatian proper. His men are fluent in Heldan, but even their grasp of the common tongue isn't the greatest. On duty, he's a silent giant, scanning the room constantly or becoming Thincol's shadow in public. Off duty, he loves to carouse, and barroom brawling is his favorite hobby. It's said he left Ostland because he killed a man with a single punch. In reality, he couldn't afford to pay for the damage he caused after a particularly raucous scrum. The Skildervjord secundus are called the I's, the second group of bodyguards who secretly protect Thincol. Unlike the Face, they dress in ordinary clothes of their surroundings and pose as anything from servants to staff to guests. They secretly keep an eye on crowds looking for threat, which they then alert members of the Face with secret hand gestures. The 2 cohorts are trained together, and like all members of the Skildervjord, they're fluent in Heldan, allowing them to pass or receive messages through simple eavesdropping, without the larger crowds being aware of what's happening. They're trained in combat, and will be sporting at least one hidden weapon at all times. They won't normally engage a threat, preferring to let the heavier armed, and more importantly, armored primus deal with it. However, they will not hesitate to engage an assassin if the danger is immediate. Mildrith the Wise, as her men call her, is the leader of Secundus. She is a wise woman from Ostland, brought down after Thincol purchased her service. By purchasing her service, the Thiatians completely renovated her village's docks to become rather impressive. She is always looking for signs from the Aesir and will read the runes to determine possible threats. This makes her appear timid and skittish, as she sometimes trusts the runes more than her judgment. Her methods have proven to be correct from the number of threats she stopped before they get developed, so nobody complains. The Skildervjord tertius are the ears and work as the agents looking for possible threats. They pose as all sorts of positions in civilian life, but they are all connected to some aspect of Thiatian society. They can be merchants, tailors, customs agents, or less savory professions like smugglers or fences. They listen for growing threats and pass the information up the chain of command. A side effect of this is they are also quite good at catching corrupt members of the city watch that try to extort a bribe from them. When they find a conspiracy, they never try to stop it. Instead, members of the primus, quintus, or even the city watch will be the ones that make the arrest, or arrange a highly elaborate yet completely plausible accident in terms of the quintus. Deirdre Hrolfsdottir is a mage from Oceanson that leads the Tertius. She is distrustful of others, but can put on a persona of aloofness. She gained the position through competence. She uncovered 4 conspiracies in her few years of service. When the previous head of Tertius's term ended, she was promoted. Her current cover is running an import-export store for the upper crust of Thiatian society, where she listens on private conversations through various false walls. Her standoffish personality makes the elite think she's one of them, causing them to let her guard down. One side effect of her acceptance into high society is her store does turn a hefty profit, and much of Tertius's budget is generated from her sales. The quartus is known as the Heart, and this cohort protects the imperial family behind the scenes. Not Thincol, as he's guarded exclusively by the primus and secundus, but the empress and all their children. The quartus appear as members of the imperial household, from guards to minor administrators to even maids and gardeners. They space themselves out, so the emperor and the children are always in the presence of at least one of them. Most of their charges aren't even aware of the identities of their protectors. However, Crown Princess Subius was briefed on the nature of the group after he successfully identified 2 guards constantly watching him with interest. Even Princess Astorella has 10 men assigned to her through an arrangement with the Alphatian court. In return, Prince Tridorian has several Alphatian bodyguards along with his standard security detail. In case of an attempt on one of the imperial family, the quartus springs into action by attacking the assailant while raising the alarm simultaneously. The speed at which the quartus can converge on a location is impressive and quite surprising to a conspirator or a misguided suitor. Ariadne Bjornsdottir is the head of the quartus and is relatively young for her position, as she's only in her mid-20s. She poses as a maid for Empress Gabriella's quarters. She was promoted because of her competence and a particular skill she possessed. Ariadne is trained in all weapons, but is quite lethal with all manners of cloth. She's strangled several men with scarves, towels, and in one case by shoving a napkin down an attacker's throat. Her actual leadership role is little more than assigning weekly schedules, as the quartus are all chosen for their talents and need little supervision. The quintus are known as the Arm, the division of the Skildervjord that even some of their own don't know about. They are the assassins of the Emperor, striking down potential threats before they become actual threats. Many are murderers saved from death sentences in the northern reaches, only now to be rewarded for their killer talents. The different assignments are given to the various members based on skill. The quintus are filled with poisoners, cutthroats, arsonists, stranglers, and all other manner of killers. They are trained in restraint and are experts at framing another for their deed. Their talents have allowed Thincol to bring down one rival by framing him for the death of another rival. Hrothgar the Sly is the tentative head of the quintus, though this means he gets the toughest assignments. On paper, the Helldonner is serving a 10-year sentence for smuggling, but he's only in his cell for special visits from suspicious guardsmen. He can exit through a secret door in his cell, and if he needs to be in 2 places simultaneously, the quintus will provide a duplicate through magic. His versatility is his strength. He can kill someone in a variety of ways and will find new ways to murder someone on request. He's one of Thincol's favorite servants, and the one he can't acknowledge in any way. That's the story behind the Skjoldervjord. They aren't canon in any sense of the word. They provide background information and will make the player's life more difficult or easy based on intentions. If they have to sneak through the Imperial Palace, they don't know if the maid can be bribed, threatened, seduced, or will kill all of them with a doily. Next week, we're doing another monster focus, covering the humanoids of the Savage Coast. Get ready for a freak show of mutated monsters. Until then, remember, poor planning on your end does not constitute an emergency on my end, even if I have to spend an entire week sorting it out.